Hello, welcome back to the latest episode of You Are My Borough. Myself, Dom Short, and Scott Wilson, as ever. And it's that time already. We're previewing the start of the Championship season. It all kicks off this Saturday. Tomorrow, possibly, as you're watching this, as Borough host Swansea. The start of the long slog where we all have the optimism and belief. But I feel like this year it feels not misplaced from a Borough perspective. What do you reckon?
It feels... Everybody's always optimistic at the start of the season, aren't they? That's a given. But it feels different to last year. You know, I don't know if I did a kind of season preview in the paper early this week. And then obviously it's still up there online on the website for you to have a look at it as well. And I think the main point I tried to make in that was this time last year, an awful lot was up in the air. You know, the loan players had left. Latte Lath still hadn't come in. Engel still hadn't come in. Bangura still hadn't come in. The players that had come in were still being bedded in. Nobody really knew where some of them were going to play, how they were going to fit in the system. There's really none of that this summer. You know, yes, there's a bit of transfer business still to do, and I'm sure we'll get to that later in the vid. But the vast majority of this squad has been here playing under Michael Carrick last season. The three lads who have come in, one of them was here last season anyway. Two of them, Morris and Bergzorg, were in very early in the window and have had a lot of time to bed in. They've been here pretty much through pre-season. We know how Michael Carrick's going to set his team up. I think we can have a pretty good guess at what the team's going to be for Saturday. You know, there's nothing like the uncertainty that there was last year. So you clearly hope off the back of that the horrendous start to last season that obviously, you know, saw Borough fail to win any of their first 7 matches. But, you know, all things being equal, that really shouldn't happen this time around because there's just not the instability and uncertainty that there was this time last summer.
We'll get to transfers, as you say there, because it does feel like it's been a week of twists and turns, really. But yeah, we'll come on to that. But first of all, let's talk team news, because you said there that you'll probably have a good stab at naming the team on Saturday. You've been to Michael Carrick's press conference on Thursday and spoke to him ahead of the game. And I guess the one question mark is Johnny Howson. If Howson misses out, will it be Morris in? Any other kind of surprises, anything to know? What were the other kind of team news talking points to come out of that?
Yeah, Howson's the one, isn't it? So Howson and Vandenberg both obviously went off in the Heerenveen friendly. Vandenberg's fine. You felt that he would have been. That was very late in the game when he went off. He's absolutely fine. He'll start at centre half on Saturday. Howson, though, while Michael Carrick stopped short of ruling him out, he basically said, we're still assessing it. It's still worrying us a bit. He got a knock. He then went over on his foot. It's clearly a problem. The implication certainly was that he hasn't been in full training this week. So with all of that in mind, Howson has to be a doubt for Saturday. And you're right, if he's not playing, will it be Morris or will it be Barlasser alongside Hayden Hackney? Well, my gut feeling would probably be Morris, I think, given the positive impression he's made through pre-season. Michael Carrick certainly implying yesterday that both him and Bergzorg are absolutely ready to go. You know, they're fully integrated in the squad. They've had the whole of pre-season. So I think it might well be Morris that gets the nod if Howson doesn't make it. And then aside from that, no fresh problems. Dale Fry, unchanged, really. I mean, Michael Carrick saying he is training, but they're being very cautious with him because he's had a couple of niggles off the back of obviously a long-term layoff. Reading between the lines there, I mean, Fry definitely won't start. There's a good chance he might not even be in the squad on Saturday, I don't think. Lenihan you would expect to be on the bench. And then obviously Tommy Smith and Marcus Force, the more long-term ones, with Carrick saying we will not see them before the international break. So already for both of them, it's being pushed back well into September before there's kind of any likelihood of them being around. But beyond that, no, nothing fresh. So I think, you know, like you say, let's go through it. It'll be Dieng, it'll be Ayling, it'll be Vandenberg and Clark, I would think. It'll be Engel. Morris, probably, if there's no Howson alongside Hackney. Jones, Azaz, McGree, Latte Lath. That seems, you know, I think it would be a surprise if that wasn't the team, wouldn't it?
And you mentioned Force there, which leads us on to Michah Hamilton, because Force has had a long absence now, and last season was disrupted by injury, which was a crying shame for him and hugely frustrating because he'd established himself as an important player, hadn't he, for Borough. It was just thankful that Isaiah Jones overcame his difficulties off the pitch in time to get back to something like his best form last season, and obviously make that right wing spot his own again. But Hamilton would certainly make things interesting. Now, by the time you're watching this, that deal might well have been completed. But I think two things really. First of all, signing him is seen as a major coup from Borough's perspective, but then also signing Hamilton on a permanent deal, because he's highly rated at City. He's made his first team debut. He's played in the Champions League. It has the look of being quite a bit of business again, doesn't it? A really clever bit of business. And you can imagine there are several Championship clubs and maybe even the odd Premier League club looking and thinking, you know what? How didn't we realise that Hamilton might well have been available? Because that from what I gather, was what has been the story of why there hasn't been more interest in him. Boro track the Premier League kind of leading under 21 players, which we've talked about on here before, which is why when names like Will Lancashire crop up, well, yeah, they have watched players like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean the kind of immediate targets. But obviously Hamilton was a player that watched, and then Boro became aware that he was available, and other clubs perhaps didn't realise that, and Boro have acted. It has the look, again, without seeing him pull on a red shirt yet, it has the look of being another clever bit of business, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, there's echoes of the Morgan Rogers deal, isn't there?
I was going to say that.
But Hamilton is arguably even further ahead. Well, I don't think there's any arguably about it. He is further ahead in his development than even Rogers was when he came to Boro. I mean, he was playing, admittedly not regularly, but he did play for Pep Guardiola's first team last season. He scored a goal in the Champions League. He's been playing all through pre-season for Man City. Yeah, this feels like a real coup if they can get him on a permanent basis, which is
I'm waiting for a special guest to appear here.
Here we go. Here we go. This is always good. Boro's newest fan.
Yeah. Do you want to just go downstairs until I finish this video? No. All right, well, you can come in and sit. Carry on, mate. Sorry.
Carry on. I mean, it definitely has echoes of the Rogers deal in that Boro have got in really early for a player who has immense growth potential. And it kind of says a lot, I think, that City have been falling over themselves to install sell-on clauses, buyback clauses, which they obviously didn't in the Rogers deal, and probably, I suspect, regret now, because Rogers obviously went off to Villa with City not having the possibility of buying him back. Now, it sounds like they're not wanting to make that same mistake again with Hamilton, but the fact that they're pushing for that, clearly, I think is a indication of how highly they rate him, even though they're willing to let him go. And like you say, an exciting prospect for Boro. Now, he can play anywhere across the front line. He's played as a 9. He's played as a 10. He's played in both wide positions. From what we're hearing, or certainly from what I'm hearing, I think you as well, Dom, it sounds like Boro initially see him as a wide attacker on the right-hand side. And like you say, with no force, yes, Sonny Finch has progressed nicely through pre-season, and there's clearly a lot of potential there. But would you want to go into a season with Finch as the only alternative to Isaiah Jones? And if anything was to happen to Jones, then Finch is the next cab off the rank, if you like. Well, I think Boro have decided no, and that's why Hamilton is coming in. And yeah, it'll be exciting to see him play.
I hope you didn't take that personally there, mate, but he clearly heard enough.
He had. He was listening to me waffle on. He put up with it for about 2. For those of you who are listening, Dom had his little lad came in very, very briefly into shot and then decided, nah, this isn't for me.
I was going to say, I hope the vast majority, because our viewer views have been good recently, but I hope the majority stick around more than what Ezra has there. 90 seconds. To be fair, he probably is enough of me chuntering on about it.
About the Boro, exactly, yeah.
I know we've talked about this before, but Hamilton choosing Boro is a kind of another string to the bow, really, and more evidence, I guess, of the good work that's been done with the likes of Vandenberg, Rogers, you mentioned there, Hackney's emergence, even Latte Lath to an extent in terms of how much and how quickly he's progressed in a short space of time. If you're working in the recruitment team or the coaching team at Boro at the minute, it's not hard to sell a move to the Riverside, is it, to a player of kind of that profile, that stage of his career?
No, it's not, because you've kind of got it all, haven't you? You've got the kind of big name manager who's got a burgeoning reputation. You've got young players in the first team. You've got evidence of young players who have come in and very quickly gone on to bigger and better things. So it's all there. And as you rightly say, yes, Boro, by all accounts, have got in early here and have almost jumped the gun on the Championship rivals. But Hamilton's agent could easily have said to him, look, don't just jump at the first thing, hold fire, because once your name gets out there, all and sundry will be in for you. But that hasn't happened. And, the fact that this deal looks like it's going to go through pretty soon and Boro are going to get a player who, like I say, has been knocking on the door of the first team at Man City is probably over-egging it a bit. But in the first team frame at Man City, and they're going to get him on a permanent basis. That's a big tick in the box for Boro. Like, I really do think it is.
And obviously the Tommy Conway situation. Again, apologies if this has progressed, if things have developed since we're recording here. But that's kind of ongoing. Boro still in talks with Bristol City, as they have been for a week or so now. There's 3 or 4 Championship clubs interested, Hull being one of them, a couple of unnamed clubs as well who are in for him. But again, if you're Conway and you're looking at Hamilton come in and you're looking at the way Latte Lath has progressed over the last 12 months and you're looking at the opportunity to play and move on to the next level of Boro. Now, clearly, Burnley are going to have things to offer as well, significantly financially, but also the fact that there's a crammed path to the first team at Burnley at the minute, isn't there, with the size of their squad? I read something earlier today of the 40-odd players that Scott Parker needs to whittle down. We'll see how that progresses. Emanuel Latte Lath, fresh reports of transfer interest this week. Red Bull Salzburg, Wolves, Stuttgart, Monaco, who've been mentioned previously. I mean, from a Boro perspective, kind of unconcerned, because reports and speculation was always going to be inevitable this summer, wasn't it? Boro went public when Kieran Scott spoke earlier this summer in making it absolutely clear he wasn't for sale. It would take an eye-watering offer to change that. And as we understand it, there's been no bids that have landed. For all there's talk of interest, which there will be interest. One, the clubs will be watching a player who finished the Championship season in such fine form as he did last season, but there hasn't been any bids yet, and Boro are calm about the situation, despite the reports this week of these clubs kind of monitoring Latte Lath's situation. Nothing's really changed.
No, it hasn't, and I think you can toss into that as well the fact that Boro are aware that Latte Lath has a, how can we put it, fairly busy, fairly public speaking agent who isn't afraid to put the name out there and see what happens. And so I think all summer Boro have expected this kind of chatter around Latte Lath, and it's not worrying them. And the situation, as you say, remains completely unchanged from where we've been all summer, which is there is an incredibly strong determination to hold on to Emanuel Latte Lath, with the caveat that if a impossible to turn down offer comes from nowhere and whenever in the transfer window, then as a Championship club without parachute payments, the reality is that Boro, like any other club really in that position, there will get to a point where Boro simply cannot turn down a certain figure, pluck it out the air, 30 million, 40 million, 25 million. If we're talking those kind of sums, then I don't think there's any Championship club other than maybe the parachute payment ones that could. So, that's the caveat in all of this. But the chatter that's around at the minute, Boro are unconcerned about it. Just going back to the incomings, Michael Carrick was asked about that at the press earlier.
I was going to say that. I was going to bring this to you. His response was what you'd have expected?
It was. I mean, he didn't want to speak on specifics. So, he didn't want to go into anything around Hamilton and how far down the line that is or anything like that. I mean, what he did say was two things I think were interesting. One was very firmly, we're still active. Talks are ongoing in a number of areas. We want to improve this squad. That's what we're looking to do. But then on the flip side of that, on a couple of occasions, he did say, look, we have a good squad here. Almost, it's not where we were at last summer, where we needed to make these signings. We needed a striker. We're desperate for a left back. We're not in that position. We have a good squad. Yes, we want to add a bit more quality in a couple of key areas. We know what they are. But we're not desperate to do that. And effectively, we're not going to be held to ransom. And I think that's what you're seeing with both Conway and the whole Ryan Giles saga at Hull is that, yes, Boro are interested in both of those players. Yes, they've held talks. Yes, they've informed the club of where the players are at, of what they're willing to pay and what they're willing to do. But they're not going to be drawn into a bidding war for these players. They're not going to desperately start upping their bid. It's basically, this is what we're willing to do, take it or leave it, effectively, because, while there is a desire to add another forward, there is Emanuel Latte Lath, there is Josh Coburn. It's not like Boro do not have one. Same at the left back. Yes, Bangura's absence has caused a bit of a headache, but there is Lucas Engel and there is George McCormick, who has progressed really well through pre-season, and who Michael Carrick was pretty quick to say today he is now a part of the first team squad here, at least for the short term. So in both of those areas, while Boro wants to add, then it's not a gun to the head moment. They don't have to add in the next few days, and so they're willing to kind of say, look, let's see how these deals play out. Our bids are on the table. Let's see what happens. And if it's not going to be, then fine. It's not going to be. We'll go elsewhere because we have alternative targets.
And I'd just compare it. So I was at Sunderland's training ground on Thursday to speak to Regis Labrise ahead of their opening game at Cardiff. And they're in a position where they still haven't managed to sign a striker. And they're going into the season, given that Hamilton doesn't feature in Labrise's plans, they're going into the season with two strikers who managed to score 2 goals between them last season. And I think sometimes you have to kind of take yourself out of the Boro situation to realise that even from the outside looking in, when you don't get kind of sucked into the Boro bubble, when you're from the outside looking in, it is a pretty picture at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, listen, there's plenty can happen in the season. And just because on paper this Boro squad looks as good as arguably any that's kind of been around in the Championship era, if you like, since the relegations, and I would kind of include almost some of the Karanka squads in that. Maybe not the one that eventually got there, but took Karanka a bit of a time to build that squad. At the start of this season, this Boro squad looks right up there with anything that's been around in the Championship. But like you say, they've got to do it on the pitch yet, and there'll be injuries, and there'll be problems, and there'll be setbacks, and this, that, and the other. But I keep coming back to the fact that it does feel markedly different to last summer, when it was a gun to the head. Boro had to sign a striker because they didn't have one. They had to sign a left back because they didn't really have one. It's not like that this summer.
And it starts on the pitch this Saturday. Before we get to specific predictions for Saturday's game, let's just have a look at the Championship as a whole. And we haven't briefed this beforehand, but top 6, who do you think? Top 2, playoff places, bottom 3? What's your kind of call as we go into the season? And obviously, where will Boro finish? If you don't have them in the top 6, where will they finish? Or do you fancy them finishing in the top 6?
I have Boro in the top 6, not necessarily the top 2. I think that the fact that last season they were 8th, 4 points off the playoffs, having made a horrendous start and picked up 2 points from 21, and then had a pretty big wobble in the middle of the season and had times where they could barely put a team out because they had so many injuries. If they got that close last year, then for me, they're in a much better position now. It has to be top 6 as the ambition, and I absolutely think that's achievable. I wouldn't rule out top 2, but I think, Burnley, Luton, Sheffield United, certainly the first 2 of those, maybe less so Sheffield United, are still going to be strong just because of the parachute payment money and the strength of the squads they're bringing down from the Championship. And I think that Leeds, while they have got rid of some big name players, Somerville being the kind of obvious one, and Archie Gray, obviously, it's still a really strong squad, that. And, I think there will be a couple of additions there as well now that they've managed to clear the deck. So I think that the top 2 at the minute, I would go Leeds and Burnley. I think Luton will be in the playoffs. I think Boro will be in the playoffs. Sheffield United, I wouldn't be so confident about, because I think that there's the financial background there, and there's an awful lot more changes have had to be made there. I think Coventry will be in the top 6. And then for the other playoff one, let's go on an absolute more of a wild card, and I'm going to throw in Sheff Wed, because I just think that they finished so well under Roll last season. And I think that a lot of the financial problems and off-field kind of angst that was going on at that club seems to have been addressed. I might have egg on my face, but I certainly think they'll be nearer the top than the bottom, Chef Wed, which they haven't been obviously since they've come back into the Championship. So I'll take them as my wild card in the playoffs. So I've got Chef Wed, Coventry, Boro and Luton, with Leeds and Burnley going up automatic.
I think Boro finish in the top 2.
Okay,
I'm even tempted to say I think they might win the Championship.
Go on.
Because I just think there's so much uncertainty surrounding all of the other clubs. So Burnley, I think there's a Scott Parker fact. Feels daft that because he's won promotion twice. I don't know, and I might be making up stupid here, but I just think underwhelming appointment after the way they charge.
Yeah.
We'll see on that. Luton, I think there's I fancy Burnley and Luton to finish in the top 6, but I think Luton, the surprise factor's gone, and now there's the kind of power of expectation. Sheffield United, I think, might struggle to finish in the top 6. I just think there's so much going on there, and they were so poor last season. How many times have we seen it every year? There's that kind of hangover, and how do you get out of that losing habit and that losing routine? Coventry have spent a lot of money. I think they'll be strong. I like Corberan at West Brom, so you think they'll be in the mix again. And I think Leeds, like you say, although they've clearly lost key players, they've still got a strong squad. And Farker, I think, is a good fit there and has won promotion before. He knows what it requires. He knows what's required. Couple of question marks on like Norwich's appointment. I don't really know much about. I do fancy Chef Wed. QPR, I thought Cifuentes did a great job last year. But I just think with Boro, providing there are no twists and they don't lose a Latte Lath, for example, in the final month or the final weeks of the window, I just think it's all there, really. You've got a head coach now who knows the squad and who knows the division. There was the momentum of finishing last season, a squad that's balanced, and they haven't lost any key players. They've strengthened areas that needed strengthening. They've got key players back like Hackney and Clark. There's competition across the pitch. I might be way off, but I don't think there's any obvious weaknesses. And I just think it all points to Boro being smack bang there in the mix. And I don't think there's anyone who, like last season, you looked and there was 2 or 3 squads that were far and away stronger than any of the others. I don't necessarily think that is the case this season.
I would agree with that. No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think Boro stand a right chance. I don't
think going into it at the minute it looks as strong a lead. Now that might be shown to be incorrect. That might change. But it doesn't for me. We'll get to the bottom end in a second, but just on Boro then, what would be your biggest worry for Boro this season?
Latte Lath not going, but I guess if Latte Lath doesn't pick up where he left off last season, I don't think that will be the case. But if he doesn't, then suddenly, do you get Conway through the door? Does he play and score? Yeah. You suddenly ask him for goals from further back. I guess that's an obvious concern. But I don't think I think Latte Lath will score goals. I think he finished last season so impressively. I think he will score goals. I guess the only other one other than that is and certain areas and issues have been addressed, but the injuries of last season, if there was to be another repeat of that, then and you lose key players like say Van den Berg or Hackney, then suddenly Latte Lath, then suddenly players like that are going to be missed and need replacement. So I guess that's the other one. Other than that, I don't think there's any as things stand, we don't know the situation at left back. Brian Giles thing's gone on, but I don't think there's any. I think Boro will sign a left back before the transfer deadline. I think that's pretty certain. Yeah, I think as well. Hamilton's going to come in by the looks of things. Obviously, we don't know where things stand with Conway at the minute, but sounded relatively positive earlier this week. So I don't think there's any glaring weaknesses or glaring concerns, which is, I guess, why I'm so confident. Really, also optimistic. Yeah. What about you? What would be your Boro concerns?
I'll tell you what my biggest one would be. I think, potentially.
Carrick.
If we talk, pardon?
Carrick.
Yeah. If we're talking about unknowns and wild card things, if Premier League clubs are sacking their managers in October, November, and Boro are right up there, say they're in the top 2, Michael Carrick is going to get touted around those jobs. I'm absolutely certain of that. For me, he is, you look around the pool of managers, and I just think he ticks now so many boxes for what Premier League clubs, certainly, take the top 5 or 6 out of it. Any other Premier League club, I think, who are sacking a manager early in the season, it's a bit different if they're sacking a manager in March, April, and they need a bit of a firefighter, and it's just very short-termist. But if Premier League clubs are sacking managers in October, November time and thinking we want a project manager here who we're going to put a bit of faith in for 2 or 3 years and build something around. I know Carrick's just signed his new contract. I know he's absolutely committed to Boro. Everything he says, yeah, I buy all that. But we haven't seen yet what would actually happen if a Premier League club came calling for him. And I think that's the wild card for me that could scupper Boro's season. Now, let's hope it doesn't happen. And like you say, if it doesn't happen, then I definitely think they're top 6. You're persuading me that top 2 is very, very viable.
I looked at the odds, actually.
I think it'll be a battle, but I think it's there for them. Yeah, I just think that, I just think that Carrick now is such an attractive proposition that I'd be amazed if Premier League clubs were looking, if there are clubs out there who are looking for managers pre-Christmas, I think he'd be in that list. Well,
the thing is as well, you mentioned Premier League clubs. If Company is a success at Bayern Munich, then you might well get leading European clubs kind of.
You just don't know, do you? I mean, he's got exactly. He's got that standing within the game that will appeal to European clubs, and that's before you even look at what he's actually done with Boro and the way that he's built the team and everything about the way that he's managed. Let's hope it doesn't. Clearly, let's hope it doesn't come to any of that.
Before we get to the bottom, then just a couple more on Boro. Player of the season, top scorer, might be an obvious one. Surprise package. Top scorer, got to go Latte Lath, haven't you?
You can't look past Latte Lath. I mean, let's put it like this. If Latte Lath is not Boro's top scorer at the end of this season, then they've either sold him, in which case, all bets are off, or something's gone badly wrong. Because, if Boro are going to win the league or seriously challenge for an automatic promotion stuff, or probably even make the playoffs, they're going to need Latte Lath to score 20-odd goals, aren't they, really? Because, for all that Josh Coburn, yes, he's going to be in and around it, and yes, he has scored goals in the Championship. If Latte Lath's not finishing the season as top scorer, then something's gone wrong.
Player of the season, I think Vandenberg's one of them where he'll just be that good every week. You come to expect it of him, and it goes under the radar. I think Hackney, I'll feel like maybe not that he has a point to prove this season, but on the frustrations of last year and with the competition in that midfield area, I think Hackney will come out flying this season and have a really good season. So I think he'd be my prediction for player of the season.
Yeah, I can see but both of them. I mean, like you say, Vandenberg just oozes class, oozes quality, and if he kicks on at all from where he's at last season, then he's going to be one of the best centre halves in the league. There's no doubt about that. And Hackney, I absolutely agree with you. I'll throw in Finn Azaz because I think he's clearly going to start the season as Boro's number 10. For all that Boro have had exciting kind of attacking players under Carrick, Rodgers clearly, being up there, Latte Lath, we all know, they haven't necessarily had a real number 10 who unlocks doors and creates things and chips in with goals himself. I think Azaz can be that player. I think Boro think that Azaz can be that player. And I think he could have a really big season as a number 10. So I'll go Azaz.
Well, I was going to say I was kind of inclined to mention Azaz as surprise package, just because I agree with you. I think Azaz will have a really kind of influential and impressive season. I think he'll nail down that number 10 spot and kind of back up the excitement from January when Boro signed him. But that might be a bit kind of surprise package, might be overplaying it a bit, I think. I think Bergzorg. There's an edge there that I like.
There's something different there, isn't there?
Yeah, and even if he's not kind of nailed on regular starter, I think he might be a really useful player, an effective player to have kind of in the armory this season. So I don't know, like, does that fit surprise package? I don't know, but I'll put him in there anyway.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it's hard to, you look at Sonny Finch, Law McCabe, George McCormick. They've got the potential to be surprised. Realistically, are any of those three going to play a lot of football this season? I mean, assuming Michah Hamilton comes in, Finch is either number 3 in that right attacking slot or potentially leaves on loan. McCabe, again, if he doesn't leave on loan, he's probably number 5 in the central midfield. There's going to have to be a lot of injuries before he starts playing regular football. And assuming Boro bring in another left back, then McCormick is either probably number 3 left back or leaves on loan. So it's hard to see any of them having a real, breakthrough season and playing an awful lot of football unless a lot of injuries happen. I mean, it could be Sol Brynn, couldn't it? If anything was to happen to Seny Dieng, it wouldn't surprise me if Sol Brynn came in, grabbed his chance by both hands, and was Boro's number 1 keeper come the end of the season. That said, if Seny Dieng stays fit, Sol Brynn might play 2 Carabao Cup games and not much else this season. So it's hard to say him either. I'm kind of dancing around the subject here. I like your Bergzorg choice. And the other one who I would throw in, again, it's not really a surprise package, but it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the season we're talking about Aidan Morris as one of the top centre mids in the Championship.
Yeah,
I'd really like what I've seen from him in pre-season. Now pre-season's pre-season, but if Johnny Howson's not available on Saturday and Aidan Morris starts, that might really shake things up, because Morris for me looks like the type of player that once he gets in, he might not come out again. And that's gonna provide a real headache and competition in that central midfield slot.
And yeah, the funny thing is, we might well be sat here in 9-10 months' time saying, like, and Johnny Howson, another 40 Championship game.
Yeah, exactly.
He showed after a defensive injury crisis. He was established himself on the leading centre halves in the division. Just to wrap up, hopefully it won't concern Boro at all, but I guess we've got to go there, seeing as though we've done our other predictions. Bottom 3, I think it might be difficult for Oxford. I wonder about Millwall. I think Hull might struggle this season. Now, they've made a couple of signings. They might make more, but I don't know. It's been a very mixed summer there. I think Hull might be the surprise strugglers. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Hull have the feeling of a team and a club where the wheels could just be coming off, don't they? Without a shadow of a doubt. I think Oxford, I think Portsmouth and Derby will probably have enough to be competitive. I think Oxford, just the financial side of it more than anything else, I think will struggle. Plymouth under Rooney.
Yeah, we're a bit unknown.
I mean, Wayne Rooney, okay at Derby, but everything, I mean, you just look back to Birmingham and the absolute horror show that became under him. Maybe this will be the making of Wayne Rooney, but, Plymouth, just by nature of the size of the club, kind of always have the feel of a team who might struggle eventually. And with Rooney, maybe. And I think I'd throw Cardiff in there. I think they have the look of a side who, I'm not sure about their manager. I'm not sure about the signings that they've made. I think there are definitely clubs in the Championship, i.e. QPR and Sheff Wed, who have overtaken them for me and will be leaving them behind. So, if you're asking me now, I'm going to go Oxford, Plymouth, Cardiff.
Well, you can provide some expert insight on Cardiff next week, because you're at Cardiff Sunderland this weekend.
You're at the Riverside.
And you've got Ellen Road for what's a belting Carabao
Cup. First round, it's just first round of the Carabao Cup, but if you're going to go to any first round of the Carabao Cup game, Leeds Borough on Wednesday night sounds like a cracker. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, thanks for watching.
In the first 5 days, anyway, so that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for watching. Save those clips to chop up and make us look daft. I was going to say 9 months' time, but yeah, maybe 3 or 4 weeks' time when Cardiff are top of the Championship after 3 or 4 weeks, and who did our
tips? If that's the case, we'll get your little lad back in, see what he reckons.
Yeah. There'll be plenty watching saying he'd know more than me anyway. To be
quite possibly, yeah, quite possibly.
Do subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to those who have. Thanks to those who send us feedback, who get involved in the comments and send us questions as well. And as we say every week, if there's out you want us to discuss, then do shout up. Apologies if anything's changed on the transfer front from when we record this to when you watch it. You know what it's like at this stage of the year, of the summer, of the window. Things change quickly, so apologies on that front. And if you're listening on your podcast channels, then rate, review there as well. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the game this weekend. Hopefully, Boro get off to a flying start, and we'll be back next week to look back on that and to preview that Leeds United game. Take care. Enjoy your weekend.